Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. Our podcast is for people that want to learn something new or make themselves a little bit better every day. So today we are going to talk again about the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. There's a ton of chatter around DOGE. Some people wholeheartedly support it. Some people are totally against it. Probably the best position is somewhere in the middle of those two. We largely support it with some caveats and things that we need to be careful of. But we're going to talk about both of those things today, both from our perspective, what we see as the upsides of the work that they're doing and some potential downsides or problems that could come from the work that's going on or the way it's set up, and things we need to be careful of to make sure that we don't wind up with the unintended consequences that come with any change or project. And I think that's an important thing to remember is no matter what you do, there's going to be something that comes out of that you didn't consider or think about. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's not positive, but either way, you need to be on the lookout for things that are unintended consequences from changes that you made. And so, we look at government and say it's way too big. There's way too much bureaucracy. It's very inefficient. We think there's a tremendous amount of waste. We think there are programs that have no business being government programs, and there's lots of room for improvement on the government. We've heard politicians talk about this from time immemorial, and they talk and they talk and they talk, and nobody actually does anything. So the single biggest thing we like about the DOGE group is that they're doing stuff right now. They're digging into stuff. Now, are they moving very fast? Yes. Are they making mistakes? Yes. Are there programs that they've shut down that they've had to turn back on because they're critical and valuable? Yes. But it doesn't change the fact that it's forcing conversation around the issue. And that one thing is more important to us than anything else. So for that reason, we support it. But we also have to think about some of the downsides to it. So we listed out some reasons that we support it. We listed out some problems that it could create that we need to be careful of. And we're going to walk you through those right now. So the number one thing we're excited about DOGE is to reduce wasteful spending. That can be fraud. It can be overpayments on programs that are legitimate programs but are being administered incorrectly. It can be outdated programs. There's all sorts of things within the budget. And we've done some breakdowns of the budget. And there's three big buckets where most of the money is spent. There's a lot of stuff that's not discretionary. The things that are discretionary, which is about half of the budget, are Medicare and Medicaid, defense, and Social Security and the way it is handled and administered. So when you add those three up, it's about half of the federal budget. Of the almost $7 trillion, those three are about 3.5, with the defense being almost $1 trillion of it on its own. So those things are rife with opportunities for efficiencies and streamlining and eliminating programs that probably made sense at one point. Maybe they never made sense, but either way, we should be digging into it and going line by line and understanding how we're spending the money and if that money is advancing the cause of the U.S. taxpayer. And if it's not, we need to kick it back to Congress and have it dealt with. So DOGE can identify and eliminate these wasteful expenditures, and they're better at it than any government efficiency or government agency or program that we've had in place, largely because this is a group of very tech-savvy people using software that's never been applied to the U.S. government before. So they can uncover things like unused military contracts, redundant bureaucratic departments. They can save billions and billions of dollars and reallocate those funds. Well, one, we could just not spend them. Two, if we do need to spend them, we could reallocate them to something that's more deserving or more necessary as of right now. So just from that perspective alone, the software programs that the U.S. government uses are terribly outdated. So I know it's cool to watch in movies how we can track someone as they move up the street and the NSA and the CIA and blah, blah, blah. And maybe some of that is true. But the payment processes or Medicare and Medicaid vendors, those are terribly antiquated and out of date. And there is so much more powerful and useful software that exists in the market that the federal government does not use. And that software is being used right now, not only to administer some of this work, but also to identify where there's problems and connections. That's how USAID was uncovered, was they ran it through the software and said, trace the things that are connected. And so you could follow the money through this Byzantine maze of organizations that have been created since the 60s when Kennedy founded USAID. And there's some very useful and beneficial programs in USAID, but there's a lot of programs that are not useful and beneficial and make no sense. We were able to uncover a lot of those things through this work. So that's number one. Number two is streamlining bureaucracy. And it kind of goes hand in hand with number one. But, the government is notorious for excessive paperwork, slow decision-making. Processing takes months and months, sometimes years. They can modernize and simplify those processes and make the services faster and more efficient. So things we talked about already: tax filing, applying for a permit for something, business regulation, inspections. All of those things are things that can take weeks or months if you need those services and you're trying to comply with what the government regulations are, but they make it very, very difficult to comply, and they make it very, very expensive for businesses to comply. So by streamlining those, eliminating unnecessary ones, streamlining the ones that are necessary so that they move quickly and efficiently, that will lower the cost to do business. It will help entrepreneurship. It'll help the economy, all of which are good things from our perspective. Okay, number three is just the accountability and transparency. Even if they went in and did their audits and didn't find anything, it would be good for us to know where our money is going. We need better governance. We need people who aren't asleep at the wheel. We need people who know the details of things to make sure that our money, it's money they take from us at gunpoint out of our pay, and they spend it on things, and we should know what those things are. So they should publish an easy report to read. You should be able to trace where a dollar goes through the system and how it gets to its end use. That would create much greater trust in government programs, which is at an all-time low right now. So many people distrust government agencies, whether they be law enforcement agencies, the IRS, the court systems. The trust in American institutions is at an all-time low because there is not, from the American public perspective, there is not accountability and transparency. And that's a big problem for the government. Like, if they want people to comply, they need to make it make sense to us. They need to make it easier for us to comply. The cart has kind of gotten before the horse, where the government thinks people are at the beck and call of the government. It's the exact opposite. Those positions are supposed to be there to make our lives better and our country more efficient. And if you're not doing that, that's your problem. That's a you problem, not an us problem. And for too long, it's your problem. We're the government. We can do what we want. So by streamlining these things and making them more efficient, it'll go a long way towards rebuilding some trust with the public. Okay. Next, it'll encourage innovation and technology adoption, like we've talked about. Many government systems are outdated and inefficient. DOGE can push for technology upgrades and digital transformation in government operations. So AI-driven data management, online services instead of physical paperwork, can be faster and more efficient to work with the government and get government processes done. So that one's huge. I don't think there's a need to spend a lot of time on that. I think anyone understands, if you used to work on an old computer versus new software, you understand the power that the new software puts at the user's fingertips. And for us to be able to deploy that throughout the federal government would make us more efficient immediately, just immediately. And then the last thing, and this one's very important to us, reducing federal overreach. So efficiency is great, but we should make the government smaller where possible. There's so many things that flow through the government that have no business going through the government. Now, we say that, and people say, well, you don't want to help people. Not true at all. We want to help people that need help. We just don't think the government is the effective or efficient delivery system for that help. It's much better, in our opinion, to push that down into communities, to churches, to synagogues, to not-for-profit organizations, to non-government organizations that are set up specifically to handle these things. put more dollars back into taxpayers' pockets and let them decide how to spend those funds locally where the help is needed. So returning certain responsibilities to state governments, pushing it to the private sector. Those are all ways that we could get that money out of, and that process and that power out of the federal government and back into the hands of the taxpayer. It would create a less intrusive government. It would create more local control, and it would allow the people that are closest to the problems to deal with the problems in the way that they see fit. It's been our experience in running businesses that the closer to the problem you can push the decision making, the better decisions get made. And that's exactly what we're advocating for here. So, all sounds great. Why are we even talking about it? What problems could there be? Well, let's talk about that. Here are some potential problems that could come from DOGE or could have come from the work they're doing if we're not paying attention and holding people accountable. So number one is risk of political manipulation. So we don't want any department weaponized. We feel very strongly that like the Justice Department was weaponized against now President, then candidate Trump to try to prevent him from getting back to office. We don't think the cases that were brought against him would have been brought against any normal citizen or any other politician for that matter. And we don't want to see DOGE or any of the groups that they are responsible for or interact with go after people based on their political ideology. It needs to be about efficiency. It needs to be about fairness. It needs to be about what's best for the American taxpayer, regardless of political persuasion. So we need some safeguards in there to make sure that happens. And we need that overall, not just for DOGE, but that we had the FBI calling parents that went to school board meetings and talking about COVID restrictions or educational requirements. They were called domestic terrorists. And they were the letter was sent out through the Department of Justice. It was wild. We can't do that stuff because we disagree with someone's politics. It's ridiculous. It's banana republic stuff. And we got to quit pretending we didn't do it. We got to quit pretending it didn't happen. And we got to stop doing it. Next, number two, I don't see this right now, but it could potentially become one bureaucracy fighting another bureaucracy. So you create a new government department focused on efficiency, and it could itself become inefficient. And we got to be very, very mindful that we don't allow that to happen. So how do we ensure that they stay lean, mean, doing their audits, making their recommendations, and pushing the decisions back to the people we elected, which is in the House of Representatives and in the U.S. Senate, to make the decisions that need to be made for our country. Number three, potential job losses. So look, there's going to be cuts. People are going to lose their jobs. And this is one of the problems we have is we should not be celebrating or rejoicing when people lose their jobs. It sucks. It sucks to lose your job. We got it. It's happened to us. But it's a necessary evil, and we should be intelligent about how we go about it, but we should not be celebrating when people lose their jobs. We can do these things with empathy. We can work with people and we can help them get to a better spot. But if we're going to shrink the size of the government, that means people that work for the government now at some point are no longer going to work for the government. So just the reality of the situation. Next, and we've already seen this tenfold, right? We've seen a ton of this resistance from established agencies. Government agencies rarely want to give up their power or their funding. And anytime it gets questioned, they push back. What I do is so important. It's so necessary. The country will fall to pieces without it, et cetera, et cetera. So you can expect to hear this pushback. Now, in some cases, that might be true. So if I'm fighting AIDS in Africa and people are going to die because they don't get their medicine because you shut my agency down, got it. That's a legit conversation. But furthering our interests in another country by funding LGBTQ operas or similar type programs, no, we have a right to say we're not doing that anymore. And it's not necessary. You might need that job, but like you don't have a job anymore. That's not a real job. We're not paying for that shit anymore. And it's going away, plain and simple. So expect to keep seeing that pushback. And you should ask yourself, why are the people that are uncovering the fraud being kind of persecuted, and the people that are committing the fraud or committing the waste or inefficiency being defended? That should tell you which side of the equation the loudest people that are complaining are on, and it's not hard to figure out. And then number 5, we got to ensure the long-term impact. So it's great to do all this work, but at the end of the day, we've got to codify some of this stuff. So how do we take what they uncover and make it back into law and eliminate waste, eliminate fraud, eliminate agencies, eliminate spending, reallocate spending. Those are all things that run through the House of Representatives and the Congress, right? And the Senate. And if we don't push those things back and hold our elected officials accountable, then we're just kind of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. And make no mistake about it, with the rate the country is spending money in a deficit, at some point it's going to come home to roost. And it's coming quicker because as the deficit gets bigger, the interest payments get bigger. They take up more of the percentage of the budget. They're more of a percentage of our GDP. And this, to us, was an existential need. We needed to get some control over this. And unfortunately, the only way to do that is to do what they did, which is to send in a group like DOGE and say, start identifying stuff. And if you're not sure, shut it down. If we got to turn it back on, we'll turn it back on. So are we going to break some eggs? Sure, it's going to happen. But we'll just have to make some omelets with those broken eggs. We think when you look at all the pros and all the potential cons, the pros or potential pros far outweigh the potential cons. And so we are 100% behind the Department of Government Efficiency, with the caveats we talked about, with the things we identified that we need to watch out for. But we are all about getting rid of waste and shrinking the size of the government. So they've got our support 100%. Saving money, reducing red tape, improving accountability, modernizing technology, limiting federal overreach. Sign us up all day long. Got it. We already talked about, you got to make sure it doesn't get misused politically. Got to make sure that it doesn't grow bureaucracy by creating a different bureaucracy. Yes, there's going to be job losses. We have to deal with that. And you know that the agencies that exist that are having their power, their funding stripped, are going to push back. Fine. Got it. Don't really care. We get to decide what gets spent and what doesn't. And then we need to make sure we do it in a sustainable way. So quick recap there at the end, but that's it for us, guys. We'd love to hear from you. What do you think about Doge? What do you think about what they're doing? How do you feel about all of the things that are going on and the things you're hearing in the news? We love the fact they put up all of their stuff on a website, and they're trying to be as transparent as possible. So that's one part we really love too that we didn't talk about. So that's the episode for today, guys. James puts it up here every day. Don't forget to go to our website, Salty Ginger Talk. We got all our podcast episodes there. We got our social media links there. We've got a daily newsletter that we publish every weekday that you can subscribe to there. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel on whatever platform you consume it on. It's super helpful for us. So this episode will air on a Thursday. Hope everyone has a great day. Very happy it's Friday tomorrow, and we'll see you on that episode.